At this week's NATO summit in The Hague, President Trump declared what was, for him, unprecedented support for the alliance. And at the European Union summit, leaders called for support for Ukraine and for diplomacy in the Middle East. In The Hague, Nick Schifrin sat down with Europe's top diplomat to discuss the relationship with President Trump and the path forward with Iran.
Kai Collis, thanks very much. Welcome back.
Good to be here.
Let me begin in the Middle East. You've declared this is the moment for Iran and the national community to return to the negotiating table. But a U.S. official says that the deadlock that existed before Israel's campaign still exists. The U.S. is demanding that Iran not enrich domestically, and Iran is demanding that it does enrich domestically. So what's the way out?
Which shows clearly that we need to talk. It is not only the nuclear that is worrying us, also the missile program, also Iran's attacks, cyber and hybrid attacks on European countries, also their support to Russia in the war against Ukraine. So diplomacy is the way.
Can U.S. and Israeli military strikes alone end Iran's nuclear program?
Well, they certainly set it back, but you can't erase the know-how. We need to have a clear agreement with Iran because everybody agrees, at least in Europe, that Iran should not develop a nuclear weapon.
Let's come here to The Hague. To the headline out of this summit, of course, is an agreement by 32 NATO countries to spend 3.5% of their GDP on weapons and 1.5% on defense-related items. That is a unanimous statement coming out of NATO. Does Europe believe that the U.S. will help defend the continent?
Well, Article 5 is there, and this is the agreement by all the parties. So we don't see any signs that the U.S. is stepping away from this. I want to recall the only time that Article 5 was used was when America asked other allies to come to help. And the country that I'm from, Estonia, actually had more combat casualties per capita than Americans had. So I hope that this is, of course, also the other way around, that Article 5 applies to all member states, all allies, and so far, America has been saying Article 5 is ironclad.
You just used the word hope. Can Europe really make plans based on a hope?
I immediately thought that was wrong, so sorry. Sorry about that. No, I'm sure that America is with us because this is what all the allies have been saying. Article 5 is ironclad.
There's also concern about how Donald Trump sees Russia itself, whether the United States and Europe are united seeing Russia as an adversary. President Trump once again said he wanted a deal with Russia. He wanted some kind of normalization with Russia. Can Europe make plans again for its future defense if the United States isn't with it when it comes to its assessment on Russia's threat?
It is clear how Russia, Iran, more covertly also China, but North Korea are operating together. And that's why it is, of course, for us also important to see that we put the pressure on Russia so that they would also want peace. I mean, over 100 days ago, Ukraine agreed to unconditional ceasefire. And remember, President Trump was very vocal about this, that, ceasefire, and if you don't have that, then there are going to be consequences.
But we haven't seen those consequences.
We haven't seen those consequences, but the tools are there. So definitely, I mean, if you compare the reactions and the push for ceasefire in Iran-Israel case, then we would also hope to see the same strength when it comes to Russia.
Part of the pressure on Russia, of course, can be economic. The other part is, of course, militarily inside Ukraine. The Biden-era weapons are now beginning to run out, and the Trump administration hasn't given any indication it wants to spend more money to rearm Ukraine. The EU, of course, taking huge steps to try and get more weapons, increase defense spending, increase production. But that takes a while. Is Ukraine vulnerable until then?
It is, of course, hard when it comes to weapon systems. We are doing more than we have done before. I mean, this year only we are already, the military support is like 24 billion euros, so there is still room to go.
And finally, this week, Finland, Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, of course, all NATO and EU members, are planning to leave a landmine treaty to mine their borders with Russia to create a so-called Iron Curtain against Russia and Belarus. What does that say about the threat that Russia poses beyond Ukraine?
it says the threat is real. We really need to do everything to defend ourselves. And of course, all these means, I mean, we have been, all these countries have been part of the Ottawa Convention,
Right.
but
The landmine treaty
yeah,
that
the
they're leaving
landmine
now.
treaty.
Yeah.
But we are in this situation. I think the threat that we see coming from Russia, that's why all these countries agreed to this. It shows that this is serious.
Kaja Kallas, thank you very much.
Thank you.